Hello everyone, welcome to your first clinical practice, CPE100 for 98 hours. At the end of this clinical, students will learn to practice within relevant legislation, the entry level for licensed practical nurses, understand the definition of consent, develop critical thinking, apply the nursing process and consistent client-specific decision-making skills with collaborative approach, effective communication, identifying own values, and participate in continuous learning to maintain competence. To familiarize with some basic terms, PN means practical nurse, host is the unit manager or supervisor, student is you as a learner, clinical instructor is your group leader, CPM is clinical practice manager, and clinical practice student placement coordinator is the CPSBC. For lines of communication, this is where you will place your contact information as well as your instructor's information, and here is the clinical practice team's email and phone number. We will now go over our guidelines and policies. Your clinical instructor will evaluate your final grade in this clinical, and for you to get a mastery, this is based on participation, completion of assignments, meeting the competencies, and meeting the attendance expectations. As a student, you must introduce yourself to staff members, wear your IDs at all times, follow your clinical instructor's guidelines and instructions, listen to feedback, complete all assignments, take initiative in clinical, and follow the BCC&M standards of practice. During clinical, we expect the students to comply with the site's safety rules and regulations. Always follow the site's safety incident reporting and policies and procedure. Always communicate with your instructor for any questions or concerns. Students must always use mechanical lifts with the presence of an instructor or other qualified staff member until student is safe and competent. Students must complete all scheduled shifts and has only one allowable absence during clinical. A letter of expectation will be given and student could be at risk for failing clinical if attendance is not met. For a total of 2 lateness or leaving early, this will count to 1 absence. No proper call-in procedure for 1 absence is considered 2 absence. For injury or emotional trauma, a doctor's note must be provided stating that a student is fit to resume all responsibilities to continue with clinical. Once again, IDs must be worn every shift with your Stenberg scrubs or light-colored scrubs. It must be tidy and odor or fragrant-free. Shoes must be worn closed toes, no sweaters, over scrubs, but long sleeves underneath are permitted. Please see the dress policy in your student handbook for more details. Anything about clinical must be kept confidential. Please do not share anything in public areas or keeping paperwork with residents' personal information. For any academic dishonesty, you may immediately be dismissed for the program. For plagiarism, you will be marked 0 and be placed on academic probation and record of incident on the student's file. For the second time, you will receive failure for the course and dismissal from the program. Ensure to provide references when submitting any assignments. Evaluations will be provided by the instructor and the student must work on meeting the competencies for clinical. The instructor can provide a student with prompt verbal or written feedback via email and together should discuss the issues and create a plan for remedial action. The clinical practice manager will be consulted. A student success plan will set out clear expectation for performance and is signed by the student and will be placed in the student's file. A referral for other support resources will also be available and will be documented. If the student is unable to meet the required agreements upon the student success plan, the student will be at risk for failing clinical and can be removed from the site. The student must be provided with a written documentation and will be given an opportunity to respond verbally and in writing to the instructor's feedback. Here are the assignments for this clinical. Starting with the site orientation assignment. This assignment needs to be completed on your first orientation day and to be uploaded on Moodle after you and your instructor has signed the last page. By answering the questions in this assignment, you will be prepared in the next shifts for your clinical. Next is the weekly reflective journal, which is a total of 1 to 2 pages and double-spaced using the ORID model. Be objective, reflective, interpretive, and decisional when writing your journal. Your clinical instructor will provide you with due dates so you are aware when to upload the assignments in the appropriate drop boxes. Next is a learning activity where you will be able to define and describe your client's diagnosis, signs and symptoms, labs, and medications. Answer the following questions and provide a written research on this report and present it to your instructor. Next is the self-assessment tool. You will add 3 comments for every competency, rate yourself, and fill out the reflection at the bottom. Your instructor will also provide you with feedback on these competencies. These are the entry-level competencies for licensed practical nurses. Your instructor will tell you when the midterm is and when the deadline is for your final assessment. If evaluated by the instructor that the student needs further support, a learning plan can be assigned for the student to complete and to submit on Moodle. For any additional support, you can contact your clinical practice manager. On behalf of the clinical practice team, we wish you all the best for this clinical.